I was 32, 8 months pregnant, and counting down the days until I'd meet my little one. My name's Emily, and I've been teaching second graders for almost a decade now. There's something about their wide-eyed curiosity that keeps me going, even on the tough days. But lately, those tough days had less to do with lesson plans and more to do with my husband Ryan. He's 35, a banker with a sharp suit and an even sharper tongue, though you'd never guess it from the charming smile he flashes at clients. We'd been married for 4 years, and I thought I knew what I was signing up for. Turns out, I didn't. Ryan's always been a work hard, play hard kind of guy. Weekdays he's glued to his desk, crunching numbers and schmoozing with big shots. But come Friday night, he's out the door, headed to his parents' place in the suburbs. It's only a 30-minute drive, but it might as well be another planet for how often he's gone. He says it's because they're getting older and need him around, but I've seen the way he lights up when he's there. Laughing over beers with his dad, fawning over his mom's cooking. Meanwhile, I'm left rattling around our quiet house, my belly growing heavier by the day. Don't get me wrong, I was over the moon about this baby, my first, our first. I'd lie awake at night, hands on my stomach, imagining tiny kicks and soft coos. But that joy? It was mine alone. Ryan barely asked how I was feeling, never came to the ultrasound appointments. Once, I showed him a grainy black and white picture of our little peanut, and he'd just nodded, eyes on his phone. Cool, he'd said, like I'd shown him a weather report. I told myself he'd come around once the baby was here. Men get weird about pregnancy, right? That's what I kept repeating like a mantra to drown out the doubts. His parents didn't help. Tom and Linda, salt-of-the-earth types, who'd raised Ryan to think the sun rose and set on their family name. They never liked me much. Linda once told me straight to my face that I didn't know how to keep a home because I ordered takeout after a 10-hour day wrangling kids. Tom's quieter, but his silence stings just as bad. Like he's sizing me up and finding me lacking every time. Whenever I'd bring up Ryan's weekend disappearing acts, they'd close ranks. He's our boy, Linda would say, her voice syrupy sweet. Family comes first. Apparently I wasn't family enough. The closer I got to my due date, the more I felt it. This gnawing loneliness. I'd waddle around the house, folding onesies and stocking the nursery, while Ryan was off playing dutiful son. My friends noticed. My mom called every day, asking if I was okay. I'd laugh it off, say I was fine, but the truth was, I wasn't. I was scared. Scared of labor, scared of raising a kid, scared that the man I'd promised my life to didn't seem to care. Still, I held on to hope. Maybe when he saw our baby, held that tiny, squirming bundle, he'd snap out of it. He'd be the husband I needed, the father our kid deserved. That's what I told myself anyway, as I rubbed my aching back and stared at the calendar. 8 months down, 1 to go. I had no idea how wrong I was about everything, or how soon it'd all come crashing down. The days started blending together after I hit 8 months. I'd wake up before the sun, my back screaming from the weight of this baby, and shuffle to the kitchen to make Ryan's breakfast. Bacon, eggs, toast. Same thing every morning like clockwork. He'd stumble in, tie half knotted, grumbling about some meeting he didn't want to sit through. I'd set the plate down, force a smile, and he'd eat without a word. No thanks, no how do you sleep, just the scrape of his fork and the jingle of his keys as he bolted out the door. I'd stand there, hands on my hips, watching his car peel out of the driveway, wondering when things got so cold between us. After he left, the house was mine to wrestle into shape. Dishes, laundry, sweeping, stuff I used to breeze through, but now every step felt like climbing a mountain. My belly was huge, my ankles swollen, but I kept going. Ryan didn't lift a finger when he was home, and I'd stopped asking. Last time I did, he'd snapped, "I'm out there busting my ass to pay for this roof, least you can do is keep it clean." Fair, I guess, if you ignore the fact that I'd been teaching kids how to spell cat and dog until a month ago, when I finally took maternity leave. Still, I swallowed it. Kept the peace. But peace didn't last long. One night he came home late, after 9, reeking of cologne and something sharper like whiskey. I'd spent the day nesting, folding tiny socks and arranging diapers, so dinner was just leftovers. Spaghetti, nothing fancy. He dropped his briefcase by the door, kicked off his shoes, and slumped onto the couch. "Where's the steak?" he asked, not even looking at me. I froze, mid-stirring a pot of sauce. "Steak? I didn't know you wanted steak. We had it last week." His head whipped around, eyes narrow. "Yeah, and I've been craving it all day. You didn't even think to ask?" I bit my lip, feeling the heat creep up my neck. "I'm sorry, Ryan. I can run to the store." He cut me off with a scoff. "Run? You? Look at you. You can barely walk. Just forget it." But then he didn't. 5 minutes later, he was back at it. "Go get me some beer at least. Fridge is empty." I stared at him, my hands trembling. "It's late, and I'm exhausted. Can't you go? It's 2 blocks. His face darkened. "I've been on my feet all day dealing with idiots at the bank. You're home doing nothing. Go." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I grabbed my coat, wincing as I bent to tie my shoes, and trudged out into the chilly night. The corner store's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I shuffled in, grabbing a 6-pack. That's when I ran into Claire. She was my college roommate back in the day, short, fiery, with a laugh that could fill a room. She took one look at me, hauling beer with a belly like a watermelon, and her jaw dropped. "And what the hell? You're 8 months pregnant. Where's Ryan?" I forced a laugh, brushing it off. "Oh, he's just tired from work. Wanted a beer, you know how it is." She didn't buy it. "No, I don't. He should be waiting on you hand and foot, not sending you out like this." She grabbed the beer from my hands, paid for it herself, and walked me back home, talking the whole way. "You need to stand up to him, Em. This isn't right." I nodded, but inside I was crumbling. Stand up to him? And then what? Another fight? I couldn't handle that. Not now. When I got back, Ryan was sprawled on the couch, TV blaring. "Took you long enough," he muttered, snatching the beer. I didn't say a word, just cleaned up the kitchen and dragged myself to bed. But it didn't stop there. The next few days, it was like he'd turned up the dial on being a jerk. One morning I burned his toast, barely, just a little too dark, and he shoved the plate back at me. "Can't you do anything right? My mom never screwed up breakfast." There it was again, his mom. Linda, the saint of suburbia, who apparently never put a foot wrong. I gritted my teeth. "I'm trying, Ryan. I'm not your mom," he smirked. "Yeah, no kidding." By the end of the week, I was a wreck. My body ached, my head pounded, and every word out of his mouth felt like a jab. I'd catch myself staring at the nursery door, wondering how I'd manage with a baby and a husband who acted like I was his maid. Claire's words kept echoing, "Stand up to him." But I didn't know how. Not yet. All I knew was the tension was building, like a storm rolling in, and I was stuck right in its path. The weekend rolled around, and I could feel the shift in the air. Ryan had been on edge all week, snapping over little things, like the way I folded his shirts, or how I forgot to buy his favorite coffee. Friday night, he came home with this look in his eyes like he was itching for a fight. I was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup, when he dropped the bomb. "We're going camping tomorrow," he said, casual, as if he were asking me to pass the salt. I turned, spoon still in hand, thinking I'd misheard. Camping? Ryan, I'm 8 months pregnant. I can't. He waved me off before I could finish. It's just a couple nights with my folks. Fresh air'll do you good. You're not sick, Em. You're just pregnant. I stood there, mouth open, trying to process it. Camping? With Tom and Linda? My doctor had told me last visit, quietly, almost like a warning, that I was at risk for early labor. The baby was low, my body was strained, and she'd said, "Rest, Emily, no big trips." I tried to tell him that. "Ryan, the doctor said I need to take it easy. What if something happens?" He rolled his eyes, leaning against the counter. "Doctors say a lot of crap to scare you. My mom worked in the garden till the day I was born. You'll be fine." I wanted to argue, but his tone, sharp, final, shut me down. It always did. The next morning I packed a bag anyway, not because I wanted to, but because I knew he'd drag me along either way. I stuffed in some comfy clothes, a blanket, my prenatal vitamins, anything to feel a little less panicked. Ryan was already loading the car, whistling like this was some grand adventure. His parents pulled up in their old pickup, Linda waving from the passenger seat like she was auditioning for a Hallmark movie. Tom gave me a curt nod, same as always. I climbed into our SUV, my stomach churning, and prayed the baby would stay put. We'd been on the road maybe an hour when it started. A dull ache low in my belly, like a fist tightening. I shifted in the seat, breathing slow, hoping it'd pass. Ryan was chatting away with his dad through the open window, something about fishing spots, while Linda piped up from the back about how I should have brought more snacks. "You're eating for two now, Emily," she said, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness I hated. I forced a smile, but the ache was turning into something sharper, something I couldn't ignore. By the time we hit the 2-hour mark, I was sweating. The pain came in waves now, rolling through me like thunder. I gripped the armrest, my knuckles white. "Ryan," I said, quiet at first, "I don't feel right." He glanced over, annoyed. "What's wrong now?" I swallowed hard. "It hurts a lot. I think something's happening with the baby." He sighed, loud and dramatic. "You're fine. It's just cramps or whatever. We're almost there." I shook my head, panic creeping up my throat. "No, Ryan, it's not cramps. I need a doctor." That's when I felt it. A warm rush between my legs. I looked down, horrified, as water soaked through my jeans, pooling on the seat. My breath hitched. "Ryan, my water broke. Oh my God, my water broke." His head snapped toward me, eyes wide, but not with worry, with irritation. "Are you serious? Now? You're gonna mess up the car." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The car? "Ryan, the baby's coming. We need to get to a hospital." Linda leaned forward from the back, her voice cutting in. "Oh, honey, don't be so dramatic. Babies take hours. We'll drop you off after we set up camp." I was shaking, pain ripping through me, and they were talking about camp. "No!" I shouted, louder than I meant to. "Turn around. Now!" Ryan slammed his hand on the steering wheel. "This is unbelievable. We're on a family trip and you pull this?" Before I could say anything, he yanked the wheel, pulled over to the side of the road, and threw his door open. "Get out!" he said, his voice cold as ice. I blinked at him, stunned. "What?" He marched around to my side, flung the door open, and grabbed my arm. "Out! You're not ruining my seats. Figure it out." I stumbled onto the gravel, my legs barely holding me up as another contraction hit. "Ryan, please, don't leave me here." But he was already back in the driver's seat. Linda poked her head out the window. "Call a cab or something, dear. We'll check on you later." And with that, they drove off. Ryan, Tom, Linda, all of them, kicking up dust as I doubled over, alone on the side of some nowhere road. Tears burned my eyes, but the pain was worse, a knife twisting inside me. I fumbled for my phone, hands shaking, when headlights flashed in the distance. It was Claire. She'd been running errands. Pure luck she was on this road. She screeched to a stop, jumping out of her car. "Emily? Oh my God, what happened?" I could barely talk, gasping through the pain. "Ryan left me, water broke." Her face went from shock to fury in a split second. "That bastard! Get in, we're going to the hospital." She half carried me to her car, flooring it toward town as I clutched my belly, praying we'd make it in time. The car ride was a blur of pain, and Claire's voice, sharp and steady, cutting through my panic. "Hang on, Em, we're almost there," she kept saying, her hands tight on the wheel. I was curled up in the passenger seat, clutching my belly, every bump in the road sending a jolt through me. The contractions were relentless now, coming so fast I could barely catch my breath. My jeans were soaked, my hands trembling, and all I could think about was Ryan's face, cold, annoyed, as he'd shoved me out of the car. I'd never felt so alone. But Claire was there, a lifeline I didn't deserve, but desperately needed. We screeched into the hospital parking lot, and Claire didn't even bother parking straight. She threw the door open, yelling for help before I could get a word out. 2 nurses rushed over with a wheelchair, and suddenly I was moving. Down a bright hallway, lights flashing overhead, voices overlapping. 8 months! Water broke! Contractions close! Claire rattled off to them like she'd done this 100 times. I gripped her hand, too scared to let go, and she squeezed back. "You've got this, Em. You're tougher than he'll ever be." They got me into a room, and it all happened so fast. Monitors beeping, a doctor barking orders, my legs shaking as they prepped me. The pain was blinding, but I kept hearing Claire's voice, calm and fierce. "I'm right here, okay? You're not alone." She called my parents while the nurses hooked me up, her words quick and clipped. "Yeah, it's Emily. She's in labor. That jerk left her on the road. Get here fast." I wanted to cry, scream, something, but all I could do was focus on breathing, on getting through the next wave. Hours blurred together, but it didn't take long, not like the movies. The doctor said I was already too far along when I got there, no time for anything fancy. Claire stayed by my side, wiping my forehead, talking me through it when I thought I'd break. "You're doing it, Em. You're so strong." And then, after what felt like forever but was probably only a couple hours, I heard a cry, small and fierce, cutting through the chaos. "My baby. My son." They laid him on my chest, tiny and warm, his little fists waving, and I broke down sobbing, not from the pain, not from Ryan, just from him. Noah. That's what I named him right there because he felt like my ark in the storm. Claire stepped back, giving me space, but I caught her wiping her eyes. My parents burst in not long after, Mom's face streaked with tears, Dad's jaw tight like he was ready to punch someone. "Where is he?" Dad growled, but I shook my head, too exhausted to explain. "Gone," I whispered. "Doesn't matter." Mom hugged me, careful not to jostle Noah, and for a minute it was just us, me, my boy, and the people who actually showed up. I was drifting in and out, the adrenaline fading, when my phone started buzzing. Ryan. Over and over, texts lighting up the screen. "Where are you? This is ridiculous. Call me back." Then later, "I didn't mean it, Em. I'm sorry." I stared at them, my thumb hovering, but I didn't reply. Claire caught me looking and snatched the phone away. "Don't you dare answer that creep. He doesn't get a say anymore." I nodded, too tired to argue. But something was burning inside me. A promise. He'd pay for this. Not today, not tomorrow, but he would. Claire sat down beside me once Noah was settled in the bassinet, her face softer now but still fierce. "I need to tell you something," she said, lowering her voice. "I got the whole thing on my dash cam, him kicking you out." "I'm a freelancer, Em. I've got a decent following online. Say the word and I'll post it. Let the world see what he did." I blinked at her, the weight of it sinking in. "You'd do that?" she grinned, a little wicked. "For you? In a heartbeat. He doesn't get to walk away clean." I didn't answer right away. My head was spinning. Noah's soft breathing, Ryan's texts, the ache in my bones. But Claire's offer stuck with me, a spark in the dark. She stayed until I fell asleep, promising to be back, and as I drifted off, I felt it, the first real flicker of fight I'd had in months. Ryan thought he'd broken me. He had no idea what was coming. The hospital room was quiet the next morning, just the soft hum of machines and Noah's little breaths beside me. I was sore, drained, but awake, staring at my son, this perfect tiny person who'd somehow made it through the chaos. My parents had gone to grab coffee, and Claire was back, sitting cross-legged in the chair by my bed, scrolling through her phone. She'd been there every chance she got, checking on me, bringing me water, making me laugh when I didn't think I could. I didn't know how to thank her, but I was about to find out I owed her even more than I realized. She looked up, catching my eye, and set her phone down. "Okay, Em, I've been holding off, but it's time you know something." Her voice was low, serious, and I shifted, wincing as I sat up a little. "What's going on?" She leaned in, a glint in her eyes I hadn't seen before. "You remember my cousin, Mark? Tall guy, runs the bank where Ryan works?" My stomach flipped. Mark. I'd met him once years ago at a barbecue. Quiet, intense, the kind of guy who didn't say much, but you knew he was in charge. "Yeah, vaguely. Why?" Claire's grin turned sharp. "Well, I'm not just some random freelancer with a dash cam. Mark's my family, and I've been keeping tabs on Ryan for a while. I never liked him, Em, always thought he was a sleaze. When I saw him ditch you yesterday, I knew it was time to do something." I stared at her, my brain scrambling to catch up. "Wait, you're related to his boss? And you've been, watching him?" She nodded, unapologetic. "Not like a stalker, just listening. Mark's mentioned him before, how he's cocky, cuts corners, thinks he's untouchable. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to meddle, but after what he did, game's over." She held up her phone, showing me the dashcam footage. Grainy but clear. Ryan yanking me out of the car, yelling, driving off. My voice, shaky and pleading, echoed in the tiny speaker. It hit me like a punch, seeing it from the outside. "I've got 500,000 followers across my platforms," Claire said. "Say yes and this goes live, he's done." I didn't hesitate. Yes. The word came out hard, final, and Claire's face lit up. "That's my girl." She tapped away, uploading it right then and there, blurring my face, keeping Noah out of it, but leaving Ryan's ugly moment raw and exposed. Within hours it was everywhere. My phone started buzzing again, not just Ryan this time. Friends, old colleagues, even strangers texting me links. "Is this your husband?" What a monster. I turned it off, handed it to Claire, and let her deal with it. I had Noah to focus on. By the next day, it was a firestorm. Claire showed me the numbers. Hundreds of thousands of views, comments pouring in, people tagging Ryan's bank, digging up his name. He called me non-stop, leaving voicemails that went from mad to desperate. "Em, what the hell? Call this off." Then, "I'm sorry, okay? I messed up. Let's talk." I didn't listen past the first one. Claire got a call from Mark that afternoon. "He's out," she told me, smirking. "Mark saw the video, pulled Ryan into his office, and fired him on the spot. Said he's a liability. Can't have a guy like that representing the bank." I felt a rush. Not joy exactly, but something close. Relief, maybe, mixed with a dark little thrill. It didn't stop there. The videos spread beyond Claire's followers, hitting local news blogs, then bigger sites. People found Ryan's parents' address. Tom and Linda's perfect suburban life unraveled fast. Neighbors started whispering, then shunning them outright. Linda called my parents' house, screeching about how I'd ruined their son, but Dad hung up on her mid-rant. Ryan showed up at the hospital once, begging to see me, but I'd already told the staff to keep him out. Security escorted him away, and I heard he left town after that, tail between his legs. I filed for divorce a week later, still in the hospital with Noah. Claire hooked me up with a lawyer friend, and my parents promised to back me every step. Ryan fought it at first, claiming he didn't owe me anything. "I didn't sign up for this mess," he said, but the lawyer shut him down. With the video, the public backlash, and Mark's influence, he didn't have a leg to stand on. He lost the house, he couldn't pay the mortgage without his job, and slunk back to his parents' place, the three of them stewing in their own misery. Word got around their neighborhood. Tom and Linda couldn't even show their faces at the grocery store without dirty looks. It was brutal, and I didn't feel bad about it one bit. Claire came by with coffee one morning, grinning like she'd won the lottery. "He's toast, Em. Mark says he's blacklisted at every bank in the state. And his folks? They're talking about moving, but no one's buying their house with all the stink on it." I looked at Noah, sleeping in my arms, and felt something settle inside me. Ryan thought he could toss me aside. He didn't know I'd land on my feet and take him down with me. The hospital discharged me a few days later, and I went straight to my parents' house. No point in going back to that empty place I'd shared with Ryan. It wasn't home anymore. Mom had set up a room for me and Noah, complete with a crib and a rocking chair she'd dug out of the attic. Dad carried my bags in, grumbling about how he'd like 5 minutes alone with Ryan, but his eyes softened every time he looked at Noah. "He's got your nose," he said. And I laughed for the first time in what felt like forever. It was small, but it was a start. I took things slow those first weeks. My body was still healing, and Noah kept me up at all hours, crying, feeding, needing me in a way no one ever had. It was exhausting, but I loved it. Every time I held him, I felt stronger, like I was rebuilding myself from the ground up. My parents hovered, bringing me tea, taking turns with diaper duty so I could nap. Claire popped in too, always with a bag of snacks or some wild update about Ryan's downfall. "He's working at a gas station now," she told me one afternoon, peeling an orange for us to share. "Can't even keep that straight. Heard he got chewed out for shortchanging someone." I didn't say much, just nodded. He wasn't my problem anymore. Teaching crept back into my life, bit by bit. I started tutoring online, little kids who needed help with reading, their gap-toothed smiles lighting up my screen. It wasn't the classroom, but it was enough to keep me going, to remind me who I was before Ryan tried to grind me down. The divorce papers came through not long after, clean and final. He didn't get a dime, and I didn't ask for much, just child support, which he barely paid anyway. Claire's lawyer friend made sure it was airtight. Ryan sent me one last text. "You win, happy now?" And I deleted it without replying. Yeah, I was happy. Not because he lost, but because I didn't. Claire became a fixture in our little world. She'd swing by after her freelance gigs, sprawling on the couch with Noah on her chest, telling me about the stories she was chasing. One day, she showed up with her brother Jake, a pediatrician with kind eyes and a quiet laugh. He checked Noah's reflexes, cooing at him like they were old pals, and I caught myself smiling too long. "He's a good one," Claire whispered later, nudging me with a grin. "Single, too." I rolled my eyes, but my cheeks got warm. It was too soon, maybe, but the thought didn't scare me like it would have before. Months turned into a year, and life settled into something good. Noah started toddling around, chasing my parents' cat, his giggles filling the house. I got a part-time gig at a local school, easing back into the chaos of crayons and story time. Claire's family and mine got tight, dinners at their place, game nights where Jake always lost at cards but never stopped smiling. He asked me out one evening, casual over coffee, and I said yes. It wasn't a lightning bolt, just a slow, steady warmth I hadn't felt in years. Ryan faded into a bad memory. Last I heard, he was still at his parents' place, scraping by, while Tom and Linda kept to themselves, their perfect little world shrunk to nothing. I didn't check on them. Didn't care to. They'd built their son into what he was, and they could live with the wreckage. Me, I was busy living, really living, with Noah, my family, and maybe, just maybe, something new with Jake. Claire caught me staring at him once, smirked, and said, "Told you you'd land on your feet." I laughed, holding Noah close. She was right. Sometimes, losing a rotten piece of your life is the only way to find the good stuff waiting on the other side.